The opinions and views expressed in the following program are those of the speakers and the host, and do not necessarily reflect those of Yoakley Scott Corporation and your sports network.
Yeah, I've been closer to Jesus before, so can you help me out? Oh, can you help me out? Am I on my own? Am I on my own? But can you help me out? Am I on my own? Am I on my own? Or can you help me out? Can you help me out? I've been scared to look in my soul. I've been afraid I would follow the road. Yeah, afraid of the things I've been told.
And hello, everybody. Welcome inside a Wednesday episode of Running Point on ysnlive.com, brought to you by the people right above our heads, Greenwood Chevrolet in Austin Town. They go the extra mile for you. We try to do the same here on this show every single day. Wednesdays, you know what that means. Scotty Mentor is my sidecar right next to me. Scotty, how we doing today, bud?
I'm good, feeling good. As you said off the air, rocking the. I don't know why it just happened. I'm
You have to clean all whites today.
to clean all whites today, so
Feeling icy.
feeling good.
There were no Class B baseball games that went final last night because the weather came in and kind of interrupted things. There were a couple of games, we got a couple of innings in, but you look at the Class B website, none of them went final on the website, so no box scores to look at, no recaps. All those games, there are plenty of makeup dates before the end of June for Class B, so they've kind of planned for makeup dates, which they haven't had to do too much. There haven't been too many days, actually, this summer, knocking on wood, that they haven't been able to play Class B baseball. We've had a pretty good weather summer where it's never not been extremely hot like this week all summer, but it's been dry at least, right? So that's just I think they have a couple of makeup games on the schedule, a couple of days, but all in all, for Northeast Ohio, not bad weather. But last night, Mother Nature stopped a couple of games, so those games will have to be restarted at a later date. The 16U division was going to be in action last night. So no Class B baseball, but that's okay because we have Scotty, and Scotty never is lacking things on his mind.
You know what that means?
Let's do it, Scotty.
This show we're getting extra dangerous.
Yeah, like Scotty likes to say on Wednesdays, let's get dangerous. And here we go, Scotty. So I ask you right now, like right off the top of the show, what are some things on your mind today?
Yeah, so I wanted to because you touched briefly about the All-Star games coming up, and I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to make it out to both or not, but I'm hoping to definitely hit one, whether it be the boys at Scene or the softball at YSU. So I'm really excited for it. I was able to attend last year, and it was a lot of fun. So I guess going off of that, I just wanted to pick your brain a little bit on what are you most excited for this year as far as the All-Star games, though. Is there one thing that does it change for you? Is there one thing you kind of look for when it comes to these All-Star games? Is there one thing you're excited about year to year, or do things kind of change year to year more?
I've said this before. My favorite part of all these All-Star games, there's a lot of really awesome things that we are able to do. And it's a great event. But one of the things that I love seeing is the players that play for the smaller schools, your Middle Ridges, your Lowvilles, your Western Reserves, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We don't separate the teams based on division. It's not like we have 3 different games from 3 different divisions. You will go up against some of the players on teams that you would never get to play in the regular season because you just don't schedule those teams. So I'm really excited for those kids, the smaller school kids, to be able to show up and prove like, hey, I got a lot of talent. I might play for a Division 4, Division 3 team, but don't think that I can't hit these Division 1 pitchers or I can't, pitch against these Division 1 hitters. Like, I have a lot of talent. I belong on this field. And we've had multiple times through the years where we've had players under the radar that play for either smaller teams or teams that, quote unquote, weren't as successful in the year and maybe didn't have the best record. They've all had players that show up and show up in a big way in these all-star games. And that's always fun to see because it just proves the point that we always drive home at YSN, that we do have a ton of talent on our rosters. And it goes beyond the teams that win state, beyond the teams that go to regionals. All that's fun. All that's awesome. Those teams are amazing. But we have a lot of teams that have talent on the roster. Maybe their teams don't go as far as they want. Maybe their teams don't have a successful season like they want record-wise. But there is still talent laced through every team on the YSN family. That's why every team gets an invite, because there's talent everywhere. And when you look at this YSN All-Star roster, both of them now are released on ysnlive.com. We just put up the softball complete roster about an hour ago. Baseball was put up yesterday. So when you look at the roster, it's loaded with talent from top to bottom, whether you're playing for, a state champion or whether you're playing for a team that, didn't get out of districts. Either way, talent. That's what I'm always excited about. So I'm excited to see what player comes from under the radar this year and makes a big name for themselves in the All-Star game.
And do you kind of are you more inclined to, because this is the seniors, kind of a lot of them their last showcase in front of so many people, and it's just one of the things where they get to have one final game where they can really kind of cement their legacy to their schools. So are you always more inclined to pay more attention to the seniors on the roster, or is it a thing if there are underclassmen and you see an up and comer and they're already an all-star? Is it a thing where you're looking at the upperclassmen or underclassmen and even getting more excited, thinking about their potential for years to come?
Well, I don't think it has to be one or the other. I mean, we're excited for the seniors that do get to play in this All-Star game. We do have a good handful of seniors on both rosters that are going to be, taking their last time to play with their high school jersey on. That's always awesome to see. And they're also, if they're seniors and their coach is one of the coaches, the seniors are able to be on their coaches' teams. The underclassmen, or the non-seniors, I should say, because juniors are still upperclassmen, we avoid putting them on their coach's roster because we don't want to deal with a non-contact period or anything like that, get anyone in any kind of trouble with coaching in the offseason. So we keep the players that are still, locked into their coaches off that coach's roster. But when the seniors get to be coached by their coach one last time, we saw that in basketball with Mackenzie Riccatelli being able to be coached by Jeff Hamilton one last time. And that was really awesome. And those kind of moments, and Sophie Gregory being able to be with Coach DeShields one last time on the girls' side, and those are always cool moments. But then when you look at the underclassmen, this is why what makes our All-Star game really awesome, is because talent is not held to just seniors. It's not prejudiced to just seniors. We have talent from freshman to senior in the YSN family. So to just say we're only going to welcome the seniors to this game. That's leaving a lot of talent on the table. A lot of talent on the table, especially this year. I feel like there's a lot of underclassmen talent in softball and baseball that you would just leave off the table if you only invited seniors. So we like to invite everybody we can. There's no rule against it. I know some people still think that only seniors can play in all-star games. That is not a rule. That is a farce. You can have an all-star game with any class that you want. So we like to have our all-star game freshman to senior and make sure that if you're talented, you're on the roster, right? Or at least you get an invite. If you're talented, you get an invite, and you will be on the roster if you accept the invitation. So a lot of talent through freshmen and I think there's plenty of representation in each class. It's not like there's a heavy load for seniors and then maybe 2 or 3. No, I think there's actually pretty leveled out on freshmen to seniors on both baseball and softball teams.
And that's a good thing to have. Is you always like a good balance.
Right. And you
So,
don't want to leave talent on the table. You just don't. It waters down the all-star game a little bit if you leave talent out there just for the sake of them not being seniors, in my opinion.
and then kind of like as far as piggybacking off of this, and another thing I wanted to pick your brain on, Anthony, is we baseball lost another one of their last old time great legends the other day in Willie Mays Hayes, and just a couple years prior we lost Hank Aaron just a couple years before. So I wanted to know, for you, do you think that do you have like a top 3 or 5 baseball players all time, and it could be players you've seen or you haven't seen? Like, obviously we don't remember Babe Ruth, but we've heard about how great he was, and there's highlights. But I guess I wanted to ask you that, and then tying it in locally, like if you could have your own like top 3 or 5, if you could handpick some of these all stars, who would you pick?
Oh my gosh, you're really putting me on the spot on this Wednesday. Like, hey, go pick the best baseball players you've ever seen or do you know? Wow. Okay, let's go. We'll start with the professionals. Oh geez, this is tough because you want to respect the people that have come before you, but at the same time, eras change and you can't ignore that. I'm not going to put this in any particular order because that would take even longer to try to order them 1 through 5. So I'm just spitting out 5 names that I think would belong on the list. So no particular order. Mike Trout. It's a shame that we haven't gotten him into Money in playoffs yet, but he's probably one of the best baseball players of our era that we've seen. His swing is, I've always said, and you've heard me say it before, that MLB players kind of, a handful of them, or a good majority of them, I should say, kind of gotten to that point where they're so talented that they get to ignore a couple of fundamentals and focus on other things like launch angle and things like that. But when you watch Mike Trout swing, it is like picture perfect. You could take video of that swing and say, teach the kid that's 8 years old, and then the fundamentals are all there. Like he didn't ditch fundamentals when he got to that level of talent. And not the hitters don't like throw all the fundamentals out the window. There's still something they have to adhere to. But like for example, in my opinion, A-Rod's swing, and when he was in his like prime in Yankee days, he kind of lost a little bit of fundamentals and because he was talented enough to get away with it. And I think his swing got kind of long a little bit, and it had that loopiness to it that you see a lot of MLB players have, but because their bat speed is so quick and they're still able to get short to the zone, it really doesn't matter. I think from my experience, someone that I watched a lot from a Royals fan, I don't know if you remember Lorenzo Cain, but Lorenzo Cain had a super like long loopy swing, and it even like made him lean back at the end of it. But he was so quick with his bat speed, it didn't matter. He was still a really good hitter. Those are the kind of things I'm talking about when I say, you've lost a little bit of fundamentals. You've put them in your back pocket, But Mike Trout, no. Like his swing is pure, just picture perfect in my opinion. I think I'd rank him. The players that are in like my era that I grew up with or that I've watched. When I say swings are really pure and just you can't beat it. Mike Trout's up there. Miguel Cabrera had a beautiful swing in my opinion. Miggy's swing was, especially in his prime, was as close to perfect as you can get. Um, I really liked um, Derek Jeter's swing too. So those are just some people. But when I'm back to baseball, um, best players, Mike Trout's up there. I it might get people mad, but I think Jeter has to be on that list. I don't know how you feel about Derek Jeter, but like not just the talent he had and the greats, but the winning, the leadership, the winning, the captain. You got to put him on. That's got to get him some points. The way he led teams has to get him some points. The presence he had in a dugout. Um, then Barry Bonds. I don't care what people say about him. Um, I don't care if it's clear he took steroids. Probably they never actually officially caught him with steroids, so you can't say it 100% true. You just look at the body and say, well, he went from skinny to really big in this span of like 2 years. But still, he's a great he did so much for baseball. He put baseball back on the map. Him and Sammy Sosa and Mark McGwire in that whole era of baseball. You can spit on it all you want and say they were cheating, but at the same time, that era of baseball had 90% of the guys cheating, and only him was the only one that came out of it with those kind of numbers. So he still must have been doing something right? So let's see. I want to get a pitcher on there. Pitching wise, once again, I'm just going with people I've seen, people that I remember being great. And the one name that just comes right to mind, and I don't care what baseball fans think of my list. I really don't. I think Randy Johnson was one that, it was big when I was growing up, and it was almost like you couldn't beat him. And when you kill a bird with your pitch, that sticks in your mind a little bit, in my opinion. And then let's see, I'm on my fifth. I'll just go with the Royal. I'll go George Brett. I gotta put a Royal on that list. So there you go. There's my list. Now let's get back to local, right? The people that are watching what they really care about, right?
Yeah.
Local baseball that we've been able to see. Um, I think it was actually before YSN, but right when I was starting to really, pay attention to local baseball. Ursuline had a team that went, I don't remember how far they went. Maybe I can't remember the year, maybe 2015. I just remember South Range playing them in the district championship at Scene and losing to them. And they had Anthony Rowan on the team, and that guy was just phenomenal for Ursuline. Loved watching him play. When I think back to some other players that we've been able to watch, Jake Gehring from South Range. I'm going to be a homer a little bit, put my Raider on the list because he was able to lift his team to a state championship and go on to pitch for a couple of years at YSU and now have a really good year last season at Youngstown State. So he's got to be on that list of local baseball. Recency bias maybe, but the way Bo Alazas and the year he had this year at West Branch and the state champions, man, you got to put state champions on the list, right? So he's going to be on that list for sure. I think I've been really high for the last couple of years on Dylan Simpson from LeBray. I'm going to put his name in that hat because he's just been so good. He's our offensive player of the year this year, but he also pitches so well. Good from both sides. I think he's one of the best players in the YSN family. When we go to Canfield and the run that they had and the talent they had, they still have talent. I'm not saying they don't, but the ungodly talent they had a couple of years ago, and Landon Vital-Keys was kind of the one that headlined that group. So I'm going to put him on there too. And then what am I on? 4? I lost track.
Yeah. I think you got one. I think you're on this.
Yeah, I'm on 4, so I have 2 more to go.
Yeah.
Let's see. Going through. You know what? I'm going to go with the guy that's going to be in 4 straight All-Star games, Evan Tice from East Liverpool. I said it before on my show a couple of days ago. I think I'd have to pull up the numbers. I don't have it right in front of me to say this is proof, but I believe very strongly that he is the only player that go 4 for 4 in Ysn All-Star games, being in all 4. So there's a reason for that. He's great. And then when I think of the 5th one, you know what? I'm going to be a homer again because he went to Georgia Tech. Aaron Walker from East Palestine. Let's go. When you go to Georgia Tech, you're going to get a stamp of approval in my book. So there you go. There's my 5 for local baseball.
I like it. I like it. Hey, we encourage homers in the right? So
I got a homer in both lists. I got a Royal in the major list, and I got a guy that went to Georgia Tech in the local list.
yeah. And there's a lot of I mean you just look at Canfield and Fitch, and even doing the Columbiana United game, and you talked about the smaller schools and the schools that don't have necessarily a level of dominance like the other ones, and I want to give smaller schools their flowers too. It's interesting in your baseball list that you did not have either Albert Pujols or Babe Ruth on the
Babe
list.
Ruth, here's my take on Babe Ruth. One, the dude didn't play against any of the Negro League players. He was segregated baseball, so there's half of the talent pool that he didn't even have to play against. He's great. He did great things. He's awesome, but it gets so old that I can't even judge how good he is because the baseball is so different, and I don't know. But like I said, it's all those players were people that I got to personally watch, except for George Brett, which is the homer category. So, that's that.
But don't you think just to play devil's advocate here, Ant? Do you agree with me that baseball and even like going to the levels that aren't professional, even throwing like softball in there, the little bit I've seen, do you agree that you don't have to be necessarily baseball and softball? They're kind of like the sports to me, in my opinion, in comparison to other team sports, that you could be a star like any shape, any size, any build. Like it doesn't really matter how physically fit you are. Like that's
whoa. You still have to be fit. I mean, okay, there are some examples out there, some outliers that probably weren't the most fit people on the planet, but for the most part, you have to be an athlete still to be on a Major League Baseball team.
I agree with that, but I'm saying even somebody like a let's throw Dustin Pedroia in there.
Oh, why you doing that to my boy Dustin? I thought you were gonna throw CC Sabathia or Bartolo Colon in that mix.
Yeah, obviously those guys and
big dudes.
Even someone like a Babe Ruth
but I think
someone
if you stood next to CC Sabathia, you'd realize, okay, this guy's bigger, but he's tall. He's probably still ripped in his upper body, and he's still gonna break me like a twig if I mess with him.
What about somebody like the Panda Bear, Pablo Sandoval?
I don't want to mess with that guy. No, he just looks like he could destroy me with one breath of his nose. It's and then I'm gone. It's over. He's a big boy, but I bet he wasn't. There is a difference because in football it tells us this too, because these linemen are big boys. But then you watch them move and you go, oh my word. they're not unathletic. I don't know how they're moving that much body weight that fast, but woo, woo. You watch some of these defensive linemen these days, Scotty, and they're like 350 pounds, but they're also running like 4.6 40s. And I'm like, oh my word. Like,
Yeah.
big doesn't necessarily mean unathletic. I want that, but body types, I think you're right. Baseball, I would put baseball at the top. Maybe golf is a good second, because golf you can you can look anyway, and you can be anyway. You can be your Phil Mickelson, or you can be your Tiger Woods. And then I would actually put football as 3. I think football, if you're heavier or bigger built, you can be an offensive lineman. If you're a little bit of a smaller dude, you can still be a running back or a slot receiver. Tall and lanky, you can be a receiver. If you're kind of just built, you can be a linebacker. Tall is better for quarterback, but we've seen plenty of shorter quarterbacks have success in the NFL. So I think football is a solid 3 when you think of sports that you can kind of fit into any body type.
And I don't know, like even women, the women's game, like, and just using like professionals as example, we've seen Caitlin Clark, although it hasn't always been pretty, and she did have a career low game, but she's had some really good games as well. But her and like somebody like a Brianna Stewart, I think two pretty different, like body builds, body types, and they both have still found the way to have a lot of success. Obviously, Brianna Stewart's got, a much more longer and much more impressive resume, but I think those are some examples too for the women's game, and how you could have just different
Yeah,
skill sets and
I
body.
think the snag in basketball that would put it like below the other 3 that I mentioned there, Scotty, was if basketball, you can be different types of uh, size, and you can find a place on the floor, but the places are specific. So like if you're not tall, you're not going to be a post player no matter what, right? And there's no position in baseball that says if you're not this, you're just not going to be successful. Like, of course, taller pitchers have a little bit of an advantage, but it's not like if you're not 6'5", you're not going to be a good pitcher. Like, you can be 6 foot and be a really good pitcher. You can be 5'8", 5'9", and still be a really solid pitcher, or a hitter, or a first baseman, like. There's no size that locks you into a certain position in baseball or golf. Now, football, that's why it gets 3, because there's a position that you like. If you're bigger, you're going to probably be on a line. If you're tall and lanky, you're probably going to be a receiver. If you're short and stout, you're probably going to be a running back. There are those lines there. But I would still put it above basketball, because I think basketball position types are more set. Like, you are not ever going to be a post player in professional basketball if you're under 6'2" in professional. Like, you're just not going to be a post ever.
And I guess that's my point about baseball and softball. They kind of, go off of your astute points, and you made, like, you're another guy I thought of. You're only a few years younger than me, but somebody like a David Wells, like, for the Yankees, was a very good top of the line pitcher in his day. I know this was years ago in the 90s and early 2000s, but he was absolutely dominant at times. And I think he even admitted he threw like a perfect game while he was hungover from the night before.
That's something to aspire to. Let's go.
Yeah. But even like looking at softball this year, and that's another thing that makes it so compelling to me, is you see athletes, and it doesn't really matter their build, their makeup. They could have a really significant impact. It doesn't matter how skinny. If you're more muscular, have more build, it seems like either way they're able to make a significant impact. And I don't know. That's why because I definitely struggle with the staying in shape and exercises. It's why I've gotten therapy more on the regular now, and I'm trying to make it a routine so I get in the habit. But when you see other people that you know they don't necessarily look like the perfect, like they were built in a lab, but they're still like at the top of their game and still elite. It kind of gives you a lot of hope too that you know I
Don't
can
worry,
be.
Scotty. We're gonna get to the NBA one day, both of us.
Hey, we can do it, right? The wheelchair Cavaliers.
Keep working on that Papa shot in the background. We'll
Uh,
get there.
yeah. Uh,
Scotty,
but
it's time for a break. We're gonna take a break. When we come back, we'll have more of what's on your mind. Don't go anywhere. Running Point always brought to you by our good friends over at Greenwood Chevrolet in Austintown.
21 News delivers the news as it happens, using the latest technology from where it happens.
Live here outside the Mahoney County.
On air, online,
Wednesday afternoon weather update.
Very dangerous.
and on the 21 News social media platforms.
From on the road right now.
21 News, the Valley's only locally owned source for trusted news since 1953.
Craftsmanship to us is 60 years of pride and dedication.
Passed down from generation to generation.
The hardwood floors that your kids take their first steps on.
The solid wood doors you quietly close at night.
The things we create day in and day out are the products that end up turning your house into a home.
At Baird Brothers Fine Hardwoods, uncompromising quality and craftsmanship built our business.
And it will keep us moving forward for generations to come.
Going the extra mile at Greenwood Chevrolet means we want to take care of the community that takes care of us too.
And we have to work together always. And that's how you stay in business for 40 years.
You know, I love being a helper because when I help somebody, it makes me feel good.
It means a lot that I can make a difference in others' lives.
So I will do everything I can and just being there for them every step of the way.
I want them to know within the first 5 minutes that they could depend on me. That's what going the extra mile means, only at Greenwood Chevrolet.
Before the lights come on, before the workday begins, before a long day is ended, or it's time to have fun. It all starts with the people at Joe Dickey Electric. From replacing a light fixture in your home to building a substation for your business, no job is too big or too small. The people of Joe Dickey Electric power them all. Joe Dickey Electric, over 60 years of powering the Mahoning Valley.
And welcome back to a Wednesday episode of Running Point on ysnlive.com, brought to you by our good friends up there right above our heads, Greenwood Chevrolet in Austintown. New or used vehicle, if you're in the market for those, Greenwood Chevrolet is the best place to go. They'll take care of you, and they will always go the extra mile for you. Scotty, we tried to do the extra mile with our show and follow Greenwood Chevrolet's lead. So that makes me ask, how many miles can your wheelchair go without running out of juice? Do you have a mileage on your battery?
No, it doesn't give me like a mileage, but
you ever tried to test it?
If I don't, I was just looking at it yesterday. My old chair would tell me it had a thing so I could see how many miles I had on the chair. This chair doesn't. My last chair, in you're eligible. I don't know if it works this way for you, but I'm eligible for a new one every 5 years.
Me too. 5-year window. I think I got 1 year left.
So this one, or my old one, I should say, I had about 1,000 miles on it. After the 5 years.
I wish mine would keep track. That's really cool. Maybe because yours is a little bit more. You have a Cadillac of wheelchairs. Let's be con.
Yeah.
I have like the Subaru, and you have like the Cadillac. Basically, if we're doing wheelchairs, I'm like a fun, safe, a little bit sporty, and Scotty's over there with the luxurious. I'm rich and I know it wheelchair.
When you really boil it down, Anton, I'm just lazier than you.
Yeah. Scotty. Some people have to actually work to move.
Scotty. Did you saw, because I sent you that video, that guy?
Yeah, that was nuts.
65.
For those of you that don't know, Scotty, in the middle of the week, who doesn't message me too often on Facebook, I get a message and all I see is what he like attaches to it, and it's like some name I've never heard of. I forget what is Danny Woo or whatever. I was like, what is Scotty talking about? So I open up the message, and it's this like wheelchair. How would you even describe it? It's like I wouldn't say circus. It was like a wheelchair trick show where this guy was going up ramps and doing all this. I was like, oh my word.
Yeah, and it looked like to me he was at like I don't know, because it didn't look like there was anybody or anything in sight. It looked like he was like at an airport or something.
Oh yeah, probably. I mean,
and
look, he also had the super lightweight sports chair. Granted, like our chairs would never be able to do any of that stuff. We'd have to get the super lightweight, to do a flip and do tricks and stuff like that. But, it was something.
Yeah, and then my buddy also showed me. I don't know if you've seen this, Anthony, but they actually have like it's like almost like the equivalent of like wheelchair skateboarding, and these guys will like do backflips at these parks like
I guess at that point you already feel like, well, my spine's damaged, so what else can I really do to myself?
Yeah, but I just think
that's
like,
terrible. I'm sorry for that.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
I just think like one flip gone wrong, and
so one of the things that I like, oh my god, the thought just left my head when I was laughing about my spine joke. Keep talking, Scotty, because my thought just went whoop.
You were saying one of the things you like.
I know, and that was my way of trying to buy myself time to think about it, but I have no idea what I was going to say.
Oh, okay.
Welcome to live streaming, ladies and gentlemen. This is what you sign on for when you watch Running Point.
Yeah, well, hey, it's we got to cut you some slack right there. We're no games, no interviews today, so it's just sometimes when you talk a full hour or over an hour, you
what was I?
Little bit.
Keep talking.
What was that, bud?
Keep talking.
Oh,
I was gonna say it's killing me.
Yeah, I don't know, but what I wanted to get to too, we talked.
Oh, got it. Have you seen the guy? He's an amputee, so he doesn't have his legs, but his upper body is like massive. He's on TikTok a lot, and he's on the if you go on Facebook Reels, he does like a full workout circuit all in his chair. So like he's doing push-ups in the chair, he'll do pull-ups in the chair, he's doing like handstands in the chair. He's like a freak of nature, and I watched that video and I go, this guy. That's where I want to be when I grow up.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I think we talked about it. We talked about it last weekend. Like those guys, like the wheelchair Cavaliers.
Oh, yeah. because I met a couple of them, and I saw them get out of a building that had a couple of steps, and they did it like it was easy. That was something else too. I was gobsmacked. He in 4 seconds he did this move where he squatted down the stairs, ripped his wheelchair over his head, put it on the ground, then jumped in the wheelchair, and it happened so fast. I was like, oh my word.
I bet you those guys could make a Crippletron.
Yes. Gentlemen, great Crippletron. Yes,
yeah.
Please. One day, Scotty, we'll take over the world.
One day we're gonna take that. That's why, because I think God knew, he's okay.
Oh, he knew up there.
Eventually, these guys are gonna take over the world.
That line in the Bible about the meek inheriting the earth. Yeah. One day, Scotty, we'll inherit it, and we're gonna be awesome. Let's talk about local sports. Let's get back on track. One thing I do want to say about the baseball All-Star game, don't miss it tonight. The draft will be on YSN tonight at 8 o'clock, so you'll be able to find out what teams each of these players will be on. We have the full roster on ysnlive.com right now, but tonight we're going to be breaking up the teams into individual 2-team rosters. The 2 coaches this year, we have Gary Niddle, our good friend and one of the great coaches in the area from Canfield. He'll be the coach of one team. And then on the other side, from across the border in the Keystone State, we are going to have Nick Morano, the head coach of Mohawk. He'll be the coach of the other baseball team. So we're bringing him in from across the state. This is going to be the second time we've had a Mohawk coach, because I think a couple of years ago we had the Mohawk softball coach come down and be the coach of the All-Star game. So love our friends across the border, across the state, and it's going to be a fun time seeing them be able to come into a predominantly Ohio baseball All-Star game, and to be able to work with a lot of these kids, and they're going to have a good time. So tonight, players, parents, friends, community members, make sure to tune in and see what coach you'll be playing for in the All-Star game.
That got me thinking. It got my wheels spinning, Anthony.
Oh, okay.
Pun intended.
All you have to do is move your joystick.
For you, we talk about all-stars, and obviously if you're an all-star, you got to be really talented. It goes without saying. But is there a certain when you think of all-star, what's the one word or maybe a couple words that kind of defines it and brings it all together for you? And it could be baseball or softball. Is it something on the field, if someone's just dominant, on the mound? Is it success at the plate? Is it their composure and the way they're able to lead and maybe not get rattled, the confidence level? What kind of best makes it up for you?
Well, in the traditional All-Star games, that you see in professional, it's literally the numbers. It's, the guys that are the most talented in the league. They're the ones that get to be in the All-Star game. For us, we just have a little bit of a caveat too, because of course we look at talent. We've been praising the talent on these rosters, but we also kind of look at, when we're making a decision on who's going to be someone that gets invited, okay, but what's your character like? What kind of leader are you? Those intangibles. Since we get to cover you all season and we get to see the work that you put in, that goes into effect too, especially when we're trying to fill roster spots and we go back with our second kind of round of invites, people that we think are deserving that have the numbers for sure. We're not going to welcome someone, hey, you have a 150 average and you've struck out 25 times this year. Why don't you come play in our All-Star game? not that, but it's just like, hey, maybe you're not the, leading your team in batting average and RBI, so you weren't necessarily the person that we had to invite very, very first. But man, you're a high character guy. You have a lot of good skills. You are really talented. We know who you are. We know what your character is like. Come play in our All-Star game. That's another thing that I think makes YSN a little bit special. And in the All-Star game, we're coming at not just as a analytical company that's like, hey, talent. Okay, we got it. Check box. We got everyone. Like, we cover these kids all season. We know them. We get to know them. We build the kind of friendships with these communities. So we also know, like, who are the leaders of these teams? Who are the guys that are in the dugouts rallying the teams to victory? And we can kind of pick them out of a crowd too and say you're an all-star because of the way that you carry yourself, not just because of the numbers you put up. And I think other all-star games that happen, whether it be the county all-star games or other all-star games that other people host, it's more of just, looking at the numbers and this top, cherry pick them and say, there you go. But we do a little bit more digging than that. We invest more into these kids than any other entity does. So because of that, we know them a little bit better, and we're able to pick out the guys that are deserving for things that go past just the numbers on the box scores.
And like, I don't know if you agree with this. I would think you would. Like, in our time being with YSN and having the show together, and some of the other people that I've come across in the company with YSN and my talks to DJ, he gave us a chance when really when it comes to me, nobody else really wanted to give me a chance. So it's something like I'll be forever grateful for. But my point being is, like, I kind of feel like yeah, we love the star players and giving them their coverage and giving them their flowers, but at YSN, I feel like we all, it takes so many different kinds, and we kind of embrace the underdog too.
We do. That's why every YSN team gets an invite. It's not just the YSN teams that won a district championship or just the YSN teams that had a 20 win or more season. We invite everybody because every team in the YSN family has people that are deserving of being an all-star.
Yeah, and you said, I like how you put it earlier, not separating it by the divisions, and that's the thing you like the most about these all-star games is the kids that maybe kind of compared to some other all-stars, they go a little more under the radar. Like, they get just as much a chance, an opportunity, you know.
And a big example this year in the All-Star game for the first time in the 3 years of her career so far, Sydney Watts is going to be able to be at our All-Star game. So there are going to be people that have never gotten to play Sydney Watts in their high school career, probably never will even in the next year when she's a senior. But they might be able to, depending on how the batting order matches up, but they might be able to go up against her. And if they get a hit, talk about that forever. Like, hey, I got a hit off of Sydney Watts. It's going to be a big deal, right? So those kind of moments where players that are able to put themselves on the same field as players that they don't get the chance to play in the high school season. And that's what I'm reiterating. I know I already said that, but that's what's going to be a real fun part of these games.
Yeah, it's definitely fun.
Have you ever seen Sydney Watts live, Scotty?
I have not, because
you're gonna have to get to the All-Star game, buddy.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to definitely
we'll fly you in.
And that's it's a week from today, right?
7 days, Wednesday the 26th.
Yes,
at YSU, 7:00 start time.
I'm gonna try to everything in my power to make
We're gonna
sure
fly
that,
you there. We're gonna get a helicopter to come and pick you up. All right.
one
The
of the
YSN helicopter. We just invested in it. Breaking news. Just bought the YSN traffic helicopter.
first
Got
time
it.
helicopter ride.
Got it lent to us on by our friends over at 21 WFMD. They lent us their traffic copter. So we're gonna be taking you up in the air. It's got a ramp, but don't worry, it's got a ramp.
Yeah, I don't
That's
know.
all false,
I
guys.
was,
I'm joking. We don't have a helicopter. Don't be sending us emails about spending money on a helicopter. We do not have a helicopter at YSN yet, but it's on my way.
I hope
On
Radar heard that because he'll take that. And
Oh, well, Scotty, I'll tell you what, we're in for a really good one today on this helicopter ride.
But if I could, there's one player because I saw her name pop up and I was following her quite a bit during the season as we close that I wanted to touch on, and that's Mary Brandt of Poland. I wanted to pick your brain and you know, for you, what impresses you the most, like about, and it doesn't have to be just Mary Brandt. You can name a couple. You could be a homer. You can name some of your South Range representatives if you want, but Mary Brandt and maybe a couple of the softball all-stars. Like, who are you? Obviously, they're all great, or that they wouldn't be in this game. That they're great on some level, but I guess what kind of things separate somebody like Mary Brandon Poland aside from just somebody that's average, not on the level?
Well, Mary's an athlete. I mean, Mary got this year as a senior, first player ever to get the NEA Player of the Year in basketball and softball. And what tells you, like, this is something that tells you how good she was and how well respected she was in softball. Like, Poland did not win the NEA, and two teams split it. So there were two teams that finished above Poland, and she still got NEA Player of the Year above anyone on those two teams. But that's the kind of respect that the coaches of the NEA have for Mary Brandt in the softball world. And then in basketball, still Player of the Year after missing the last 8 or so games of the season with an injury. So minus 8 games to her schedule. So the numbers might have not been there. She didn't lead the NEA in scoring or anything like that because she missed a lot of games. But they still had that respect for Mary Brandt. And they still made her NEA Player of the Year because they knew, like, she's the best basketball player that we have in the conference, despite missing the last 8 games to an injury. She's just an athlete, and then she was first team all conference in soccer too. So what she's been able to do in her career at Poland, like, if it wasn't for what Jackie Grisdale did a couple of years ago with getting like 20 letters in her varsity career, which is just ungodly and unreal, Mary Brandt might go down as the best athlete to go through Poland. But Jackie Grisdale is a hard bar to get to when you have 20 varsity letters in your high school career. But Mary Brandt's right up there. When you are able to excel and be great at every sport that you kind of put yourself into, it's not just talent. It goes beyond talent because, yes, she has a bunch of athleticism. Yes, she's able to do a lot of things that other kids aren't able to do just athletically. But that also just pours into your work ethic, pours into what you do in the off season, in the practices, in the gym, dedicating yourself to that sport. You don't get to that level without doing that. And that's what Mary does really well. And that's why she's going to be a Division I athlete, continuing her softball career at Robert Morris after she already graduated. So now she's officially a Robert Morris Colonial. But one last time in the Poland uniform down there at YSU. So it will be your last chance to see Mary Brandt as a Bulldog a week from today at Youngstown State University.
And is there I wanted to talk because you're South Range and you bleed the colors, and basket we did a basketball game together as well, not too long ago, and it was my first game out at South Range High School. Uh, I wanted to ask you a little bit about. Um, Forgive me if I'm butchering the name, but Kyra Brogan,
Kira, yeah.
Kira. Okay, Kira. I wanted to ask you a little bit about her as we close out the show.
Well, excuse me.
Were you gonna say?
I got a tickle, so I gotta get rid of it before I talk. But we go from talking to a senior that's been there for a long time to one of the young leaders. Someone that has kind of stepped into a leadership role as a young athlete. Sophomore, still there, man. Sophomore, but a middle infielder, and when you're a shortstop in the middle of the infield, you got to be a leader. Like, you got to be a leader of the infield. You got to be able to take charge of balls, and get your fellow infielders in the right positions and things like that. Usually in softball, you see the shortstop call out to the infield how many outs there are, where the ball is going to be going. Ground ball, we're going to one, things like that. You can't get around being vocal as a shortstop, and she's one of the leaders of that team, even though she's just a sophomore going into her junior year. It's been incredible to watch her just kind of step on the field, immediately make an impact. She's been to back-to-back state tournaments now, so she'll be someone the next 2 years that'll be going for 4 straight bursts into the state tournament, which she can accomplish, and I think that South Range team can accomplish. I mean, when you look at the young talent on that team, it's not just her. They graduate one senior, and you don't want to downplay the importance of what Gretchen Bartels brings to the table. But at the same time, like, everyone else is coming back to that team next year. So a lot of young players, because of that fact, had to step up and lead. And Kira Brogan's one of them. And that's when I was talking about things that go a little bit past numbers. Kira Brogan has awesome numbers, and she leads the team in a lot of categories. But her all-star status, in my opinion, goes past the numbers and goes into how she carries herself as a player, the work ethic that she puts in, and the leadership she has on that team. That makes her an all-star as much as the numbers that she's been able to put up this year do as well.
And it's something I definitely just the pure fire and passion that the girls play with. We've seen it in basketball at the All-Star games, and I thought, in my opinion, they were all great, but I thought this year's the girls' All-Star game was the best event, in my opinion, of the Ysn All-Star.
I like you getting on board with the girls' sports and being a fan. Welcome to the wagon, buddy.
Well, yeah, you're rubbing off on me.
That's good. That's good
for sure. I know we only got like a minute left, but do you think, Gabe, that like it's just as simple as success breeds success?
Oh, yeah.
That's why some of these, or do you think but do you think in any way, I guess the final thing I'm asking, do you think in any way, because we're around the same age, do you think the competition's changed and it's that much at a higher level, even compared to when we, our graduating class, when we graduated? Or do you think, you're just seeing it more up close now, so maybe you appreciate it a little bit more as a sports personality than when you were in high school and not, you know. So what do you think?
That's a good point, Scotty, because when I was in high school, still a big sports fan, but I was a South Range guy. I went to South Range. I was watching South Range stuff, and I wasn't too focused on the sports world outside of them. So we had a good softball team back when I was in high school, and we went to back-to-back regional tournaments in 10 and 11 my junior and senior year. And when I look back on that time, and I'm thinking, well, there wasn't a lot of competition in the area, but honestly, I didn't pay attention to too much stuff outside of South Range. I knew Erin Gabriel was in Poland. She was doing her thing. That was definitely a thing back in the 2010 and to all the way to 2013. Champion was still there. Champion was still champion. But if you ask me about like all these other teams that the YSN covers and what their softball and what the kind of picture of softball and Northeast Ohio looked like back then when I was in high school, I honestly wouldn't be able to tell you. Like I didn't pay attention to that until I signed on to YSN, and my job was no longer just to focus on South Range, but to focus on the whole big picture and everyone that signed on to YSN. So it's easy for me especially, to say this is the best softball we've ever seen. But in all reality, I didn't know too much about the softball big picture back when I was in high school. So it's hard for me to say that with total confidence. What I can say with confidence, since, I think I would have still heard about someone that was going to a big school. I think this is the most talent college-wise that we've seen in softball since I was, at least since 2008, when I started getting interested in the world. I don't think there is a time where I can remember where we've had so many, not just college athletes, but we're talking, we have 2 Power 5 commits right now that are both going into their senior year. We're going to have some more. I guarantee there are some girls going into their junior year this year that are probably going to commit to Power 5 teams, definitely D1 teams. We have a couple more D1 players, and then this college commits up the outside of D1, up the wazoo for softball. You haven't seen that before, at least in my experience. I could be wrong. I mean, I know Erin Gabriel was a Tennessee commit, and that was awesome, but I feel like Tennessee, she was the only one in that time in local that was going anywhere close to Power 5 or D1. If there were other players in the Tri-County area, then I apologize. But once again, I wasn't huge into the world of the big picture of softball. But it felt like Erin Gabriel was just dominating every headline. And now you can't dominate the headline because talk all you want about Sydney Watts going to Georgia Tech, but then it's like, hey, Gabby Gradishar is going to Penn State. And it's like, in a little bit, we're going to see Kylie Folkwine. She's probably going to be going to a Division I Power 5 school. And then Figueroa from Canfield, same thing, probably definitely Division I, maybe a Power 5 school. You can't hog the headlines anymore just because you go to Power 5. It's incredible. I think it's incredible. I think it's the best softball we've ever seen. But I will say, Scotty, when I was at the state championship, their program had a map of Ohio with all the state champions and where they were from since the start of high school softball. And if you broke the state into 4 quadrants, just 4, put a big cross in the middle of the state, you would see a huge majority of those state championships coming from the northeast section of the state. So that tells me that Northeast Ohio, in that broad sense of the upper right quadrant of the state, has been really good at softball for a long time.
Yeah, it's great to see, and it just seems like every year to me as the year passes, that bar it kind of gets raised even a little bit higher. But like you said, maybe being a prisoner of only my time at YSN and not really knowing is nearly as much about it as I do now. So I didn't have that knowledge back when I graduated high school either. But it's just like this competition, it's the levels of it is through the roof, and it's great to see as a fan, and it's great to see the sports you love, and the girl sports, and not just the WNBA, but all sports on all levels, finally starting to get for the women. They're getting the recognition, and they're
I
getting
saw
what
on a
they
podcast. I
deserve.
saw on a podcast yesterday. Jada Coleman, and softball fans will know who that is. She's played center field for the last 4 years at Oklahoma, graduating, 4-time national champion. They asked her what she thought the biggest sign of growth in women's sports was. And it was probably the most unexpected answer but when you think of it, it's like, oh, that's technically true. She goes, the fact that I get roasted in center field by fans tells me that we're growing as a sport. We are being treated like men's sports because of that. Because she goes, for the longest time, you wouldn't trash talk a female athlete. You wouldn't go. You fans are expected to be a lot more, especially like the college student fans. You go to a football game, they know everything about you. They're calling out your mama, your dad, your cousins, your girlfriend. Like nothing's off the table when you're yelling at a football player or a basketball player in the men's game. But she's like, hey man, these softball fans are turning into this brutal trash talkers in the crowd. And she said, we're finally being treated like men's sports. And that's one of the things she said. And she's like, anytime I hear that kind of stuff, I just remind myself, like, this is a step in the right direction. And ain't that the truth? And when you can hear that kind of stuff and then rationalize it that way, and it's kind of true. Like, we are, now that the media is starting to cover it more because we have polarizing players like Caitlin Clark, and we have a polarizing storyline, which I think is just as important. I think the rivalry between her and Angel Reese and some of the other players in the WNBA, I think that's as important. That's what makes this story so juicy and people keep talking about it. It's where we're finally getting to a point when they're just talking about the sport, and you could tell a couple years ago even, when they would talk about women's sports on these shows, the tone was different. It was kind of like, they were just throwing a cookie that way. Oh, it's so nice that we're talking about this. Okay, let's move on to something important. And you could tell the broadcaster didn't really even care about what they were talking about. But now it's just talked about like it was just any other sport, which is something I love to see. And that's why a couple of months ago, I went on the rant that said, stop getting on these broadcasters because you don't like their opinion on something, because at least they're sharing opinions on women's sports. For the first time, for a lot of these national talking heads in the sports media world, they're literally talking about women's sports because they want to, not because it was something that they have to do. So let's not chase them away because maybe they're saying something that isn't, a glowing, absolute praise of Caitlin Clark. Okay, that's like, there are people that still think that Patrick Mahomes isn't awesome. I'm not going to roast them for that opinion on social media and scare them away from talking about football, even though they're wrong. But like, let's stop like scaring people away from talking about women's sports in a way that we talk about men's sports all the time in the national media circuit.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think part of it's just the society we live in now. It just seems to be it just seems to me like there can't be any gray area anymore. Like, you have to be totally on one
I
side.
don't get the latest argument. Like, I don't know if you saw that foul that Angel Reese had on Caitlin Clark the other day, where it's getting everyone in such a frenzy. Like, it was called perfectly. It was a flagrant one, not a flagrant two. Flagrant one it's a basketball play, but it was still forcible contact to somewhere above the shoulders, neck or head. It was absolutely that. She went for the ball. It wasn't like she just went right for the head. Went for the ball, missed the ball, hit her in the back of the head. It's a flagrant one. I was sitting there going, why is this such a big deal? They made the right call, and I'm sitting there like they didn't bump it up to a flagrant two and say it was a dirty play and she should be out of the game. I'm just so confused because there are people on both sides that say, well, Caitlin Clark gets all the calls. And I'm like, well, she got hit in the back of the head. And then there are people that are saying, well, Angela Reese, sturdy player, and she was aiming for her head. And I'm like, well, no, you can see she was going for the ball, missed it, and caught. Like, that was a basketball play that ended in the right call, flagrant one, and it shouldn't have been even – it shouldn't be a story. But the climate we live in right now, where everyone's picking sides, I think it's kind of bad for just the WNBA, not women's sports in general, but the WNBA right now, because there's this battle between people that have been watching it for a long time and the people that are coming to it right now.
And then the newbies.
Yeah, I think the newbies think that like Caitlin Clark is like the best thing since sliced bread, and there's some old fans that are like, okay, she's really, really good. She's doing a lot of things for us. Thank you. But there are also like hundreds of women that have built this league for the last 28 years and kept it afloat so she could come in and raise the bar to it. So let's not lose respect for that either. And I'm kind of in that boat because I've been watching women's basketball for a long time. I'm like, yeah, but let's kind of respect the Maya Morris and the Skylar Diggins and the Sabrina Ionescu's and these players that are really, really good at basketball that have come into the league and kind of started the trend up. Because last year, before Caitlin Clark got to the WNBA, the ratings were still on a big uptrend. So it's not like they were like in the trash and then she came and they went all the way up. Like they were starting to go up and she just kind of gave it that extra boost and now it's skyrocketing, which is awesome. We're not like we like the people that are the old fans for the most part, in my perspective, not saying that that's not awesome. And we're not saying that she's not great and she's not doing great things for the sport. What we're saying is like, she's not the only one out there that's doing great things for the sport. That's the only thing that I kind of have a little bit of a niche with when I hear people, up her butt, saying that like she's the only one that anyone ever cares about for women's basketball. And I know a lot of people firmly agree with that, and it kind of hurts because it's like, there's a lot of good players in that league, and there's a lot of players that have been there for a while that have put in their dues too. And as a fan for a while, not just a fan when Caitlin Clark got there, I'm like, it hurts to hurt a little bit. Scotty, we are running out of time. We have run out of time. What a great conversation that was about sports, mostly local, some national. And we will see you guys. I'll see you next week. See everyone else tomorrow from 1 to 2. Thank you so much for tuning in. Running Point, always brought to you by Green.